Whistler is a world-renowned resort town, and our guest today, Jeremy Fairley, was born and raised there. Starting off his career, he won Rookie of the Year, and since 2019, he has sold over $100 million worth of real estate. Licensed with StillHavn, Jeremy services homeowners, out-of-town owners looking for vacation homes, and real estate investors. So you were born and raised in Whistler. What made you get into real estate up there?
Yeah, so I was actually trying to become an agent in the MBA. So I went to school and got a business degree and sport management degree. And I always liked the side of sport, but more side of the business. So I grew up playing every sport, wanted to get in the business side, was working for the Raptors, and I was in actually Philadelphia. And I met DeMar DeRozan's agent at the time. His buddy was doing real estate solely for professional athletes. And that kind of like prompted me to get into it. I found real estate's kind of the same thing anyways, like a lot of negotiation, marketing, branding, relationships. And yeah, just kind of went from there.
Very cool. Very cool. That's a cool transition. And one of my dream jobs growing up as well was to be a hockey agent. And it's funny how it, kind of leads you into this world, and a lot of commonalities there with relationship building. And you started your career with Engel Völkers. You're now with StillHavn. Back in 2018, you won Rookie of the Year there. Talk about what allowed you to build success early on in your career and achieve, Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, totally. Honestly, it came down to a lot of hard work. I didn't come from like a family that had, a ton of money, like a lot of other realtors or people in our profession have, like those connections. So I just had to work for kind of everything. So I was running more open houses than probably anybody in history. From there, I started to develop a lot of relationships with clients. And then on the buy side of things, I felt what really like started to push me was I had a very authentic understanding of Whistler that like a lot of people didn't have. I also was finding things for clients. If you gave me $1 million budget or a $2 million budget, I was finding things for $500,000 or $1.5 million that worked just what they wanted, but didn't have to be at those crazy high numbers. So they really saw that I actually kind of cared about the product I was selling, not so much just making a sale. And then from the listing side of things, I always was obsessed. Obviously, we're all younger guys. We were born and raised in the time of Instagram and social media. So we saw how important it really was to tell a story and to really kind of make yourself shine via kind of marketing. So with listings, it was pretty much just trying to tell a story and really doing some different kind of video work and photography work that a lot of people weren't doing in Whistler at that time. And that really helped to start establishing records. And so almost every listing I was bringing on in the first couple of years was a record. And at that point, we were in a market that was pretty flatline. Wasn't as easy as it is to sell something right now. The demand was obviously not where it is now. So that really kind of just started to snowball. And then from there, it's just been a lot of referrals and repeat business. And that obviously speaks volumes because obviously it's been amazing to meet so many great people, but obviously have their trust and get their friends' trust is awesome as well. So.
Yeah, amazing. And as we know, being in this space, it seems like, there's realtors around every corner, and finding those ways to, at a young age, differentiate yourself is key. And through, the media and the way that you're marketing is pretty cool to hear that's the way that you went. And, secondary homes in cities like the Sunshine Coast or out in the Okanagan saw a significant increase in demand during COVID. Did you see this trend happening in Whistler as well?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, what we actually have seen a lot of and why prices have really surged in Whistler. I mean, we were, even before COVID, we were one of the most expensive places to live in Canada. But I think what really projected us through was, the amount of North Shore, North Van, West Van, Point Grey, Kitsilano families actually moving their families up full time to Whistler. They realized the community up there is fantastic. Obviously, the skiing and biking is amazing, but how there's no dangerous neighborhoods, great place to raise a family. The schools are small classroom sizes, so that really projected a lot of things to really snowball. But yeah, like Kelowna and Victoria and other smaller areas out of the city, we've really seen a huge influx of demand, which has obviously swelled the prices upwards. So
that's an interesting point you made there about people kind of relocating. Almost more full-time, and that leads into my next question is from the business that you've done is what percentage of it would be people that are buying up there as a primary residence, and what percentage of people would you say are more looking at as a vacation home or secondary home, and obviously now that time spent there has been increased over the last several years.
Yeah, totally. So I would say that in my kind of, almost 5 years now, I've only actually worked with 2 families from Whistler. Almost all of my work is with Vancouver families looking for Airbnb properties, secondary homes. I mean, Greater Vancouver for the last 3 years has probably done about, 80+% of our purchases up there. And that's really what is keeping the machine working up there. So I would definitely say, even though I might be a little bit different, I don't usually work with that many families, from Whistler, because if they're selling, a lot of the times they're actually leaving. They're going to the island or interiors or other more affordable places to live for retirement. So predominantly it's the North Shore and Kitsilano, Point Grey, etc.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, living here on the North Shore, having Whistler such a close proximity. If I had the ability, it would definitely be somewhere that me and my family would love to look. So it definitely makes sense. And taking a look at the market, maybe touch on some of the key how many days the properties are being on the market, the price, the offers, and maybe just on some of the activity levels going on.
Of course, yeah. Well, I mean, so a key indicator of how the market's really swelled is if we looked at summer 2020, so you're looking at let's say May to August of 2020 and May to August of 2021. In those months in 2020, we probably would have been doing anywhere from 70 to 100 million a month in volume, in the town, with things sitting for about 120 days in the market, so around 3 to 4 months in the market, a lot of the stuff. And you were seeing listings around 400 listings. Now, fast forward to 2021, we're seeing, more than 50% of those listings available. We're seeing about 150 to 165. You're seeing the volume higher at 100 to 130 million, and properties sitting anywhere from, you could say statistics, it'll say 10 to 30 days, but a lot of the business was actually being done before the properties even hit the market. And if they were hitting the market, 95% of them through the last, I'd say, 8 to 12 months have all been under DRPOs, which is direction of offers, where you wait 7 to 10 days and then you look at all offers at once. So I would say recently, especially condos and townhouses, they're going almost overnight.
And that's a strategy that both the realtor and the seller work together with, I'm assuming, to garnish more interest in a higher offer price.
Totally. Yeah, definitely. But we did actually see a lot of off-market deals actually happen last year. I can say for myself, I did probably over 30 million alone in just off-market deals. I think, the reason that happened so much is there was such a limited amount of inventory, but people were still sitting on the fence about whether or not they wanted to sell. So if the right kind of buyer came to them and, we were able to present them with a deal, they didn't really feel the need that they had to go to market, because the things were still selling at a price that would have been very fair for a seller, but also it proved to be excellent for a buyer because the market just caught up with those off-market sales that were occurring.
So if you have a listing with a seller, what type of advice are you giving them, and how are you positioning them heading into a market type listing right now?
Totally. So it very much depends on what it is, and I say that because, let's say for example, it's a detached home. Out of the probably 30 or 40 detached homes we have available in Whistler right now, say a lot of those are going to be in a price point that might be too high for a lot of people, let's say north of 5 million. And then from under there, you're looking at a remaining amount of inventory that there's no more land left to build in Whistler and left to obviously develop on. So the demand for it is exceptionally high. So I am always pushing to really test the waters on price and everything. We're seeing obviously all-time low interest rates, all-time high demand. So there's a very good probability that even if you test that price off of, more than whatever the neighborhood sold for, your neighbors, that is a significantly superior to yours, you're likely still gonna be able to get an exceptional price, and likely higher than anything else that's ever listed on that street or complex. So we're seeing a lot of record sales on streets and complexes almost every single month, a couple $100K sometimes to what the last complex sold for. But then if it's more of an investment side, if it's more of a phase one Airbnb style, sometimes makes more sense with the amount of demand that exists for that product to kind of hold, not kind of just take offers as they come, as I would on a detached home at a higher price. I would price it lower, to a point where it's really going to attract a lot of people. And that's where you start to see the 5, 10, 15, 20 offers. And sure enough, it goes for much over than what it's listed at. So I would say it really depends on what you're dealing with. Like obviously phase one's between, that means you can nightly rental something. In between $1 million to $3 million, you got probably 30 buyers. Whereas like the homes that are now getting up to the 4 million, 5, 6, it's obviously a very smaller number, right? So it's kind of different strategy for each product.
And with Whistler being a resort town, most of your buyers are from out of town. Is there, maybe a bit of a different strategy or advice you're giving your buyers when they're not necessarily, in Whistler?
Yeah, totally. So I mean, like I was doing this even before COVID, but I always encouraged and have encouraged my buyers to see as much as they possibly could. So even when our market was flatlined, I wanted them to see as much as they could. And the reason for that was every single building and neighborhood and everything in Whistler is so unique, even though it's such a small town. But when you do that, you learn about the buildings, you learn the history of the building, how the strata has been managing it. So a lot of the times there's not really a need for sometimes things like inspections and whatnot. Obviously, most of the properties that we're seeing coming up, a lot of them are nightly rentals, and that's what I deal a lot of. So a lot of my clientele in the nightly rental market, it's all just about seeing what they, or as much as they can prior to, so that when something comes up, they know it's in an area they like, they know it's in a building they like. We've already reviewed or looked at the strata for a lot of those kind of different buildings and areas and stuff. And then from there, it's just kind of, honestly, a lot of it's been putting their trust in me. Because a lot of clients, yeah, they don't even have the time to come up and see it. So knowing the areas, knowing what your ROI is going to be, and knowing it's a good building that's not going to give you a million headaches, 2 to 5 years down the road is really important, right? So yeah. I've tried to push also on my clients some patience in the last year or so, because a lot of the inventory that's coming up, now we're starting to see an influx, yes, but last year there was so much bad inventory coming to market that if the market were to shift in a couple of years, you don't want to be stuck with something that's really difficult to sell in a slow market. So keeping that patience and waiting for the right building and the right units to come up, I think is super important.
Those are all really good points, and leads me into my my next question about nightly rentals and obviously with the prices of hotels in Whistler. And you talked about the stage 1 areas. Touch on what nightly rentals are, what the Airbnb strategy is, and what kind of advice do you give people heading into that strategy?
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, as you guys know, Airbnb's totally changed the way people look at real estate, the way people look at travel. I know, for myself, whenever I go away with friends, I want to stay in an Airbnb. It's more accommodating for a group of people. So that's what's really accelerated Whistler's market as well, since about probably 2016, is the prevalence of Airbnb being known across the globe. What makes, I think, Whistler a strong investment standpoint is not only, we get 3.5+ million visitors a year to Whistler, but it's also, we don't have things that you guys have in Vancouver and other areas, such as the taxation on empty homes, speculation tax, things like that. So from that side, technicality, it's awesome. But I would also say what really separates Whistler is the municipalities actually zoned particular areas to allow commercial short-term use. So in areas like Vancouver, Toronto, other big cities across Canada, it's the strata that's actually deciding whether or not you can Airbnb. So with Whistler, that when you buy that premium product with that zoning that allows you to Airbnb and generate those numbers for you, you know that you're buying without having the fear of it ever being taken away from you, which is, I think, awesome. But when my clients want to look at an Airbnb, it's all about finding an area that works for them. And it all depends on their usage and stuff, right? So area-wise, if someone's looking at an Airbnb, traditionally, your upper village zones where you have the ski in, ski out, and bike in and out, those are going to be your highest performing areas, but they're also going to be your most expensive products. So if you're going to be utilizing it a lot, maybe if you love skiing, you want to be there, but there also are other fantastic areas that you can actually own in Whistler and own an Airbnb in Whistler that will thrive, even if it's not in the most sought after and highest cost of living areas, such as the Benchlands of the Village. I'm trying to think of anything else for Airbnb wise, I don't know.
Well,
do you recommend a good property manager, or do you have people self-manage those?
I'd say, so for that point, the self-management stuff, if you're from Vancouver, and you are relatively south, I would honestly recommend, as I do most of my clients, just doing it themselves. It's really easy to run Airbnb if you have a good cleaner. And after that, everything's super user-friendly. Property management companies do exist in Whistler. The larger ones will take a pretty aggressive cut of your revenue, though. So I always try and push some of the smaller boutique companies. They have 5 to 15 properties in their portfolio. They're charging 15 to 20%, still doing an excellent job of giving you a high return on your investment. And at the end of the day, though, necessarily need a property manager to really be promoting that product for you. Airbnb sells itself, VRBO. And yeah, once you find a good cleaner, I think you're off to the races. And Whistler, the reason the demand hasn't stopped, in my opinion, is because those numbers are consistent. Our tourism numbers, obviously leading up to COVID, were almost the exact same or higher year after year after year since about 2014. And so I think that consistency and getting, we do over 30% of BC's tourism, so that's also another reason that makes Whistler so prominent for Airbnbs to actually exist.
Yeah, and as an outsider, we hear a lot of Whistler's housing crisis and just the lack of supply in the market. Is there anything that's going on in the city to help the supply issue?
It's probably been the housing crisis in Whistler from a rental standpoint and affordability standpoint has been Whistler's biggest problem for almost 20 years. Obviously, we get a ton of tourism. So a lot of those properties that have sold in the last 10 years with the prevalence of Airbnb that I just discussed, that's what's really started to snowball the effect of the housing crisis. We have things like the Whistler Housing Authority, which is run by the municipality of Whistler, and that's trying to put affordable housing for both ownership and rentals into our town, but it's definitely not being done at a fast enough pace. So yeah, I'm sure you've heard the horror stories, but yeah, you got people renting bedrooms for $1,500 to $1,800 a bedroom with 10 other people living in the house. 2 25-year-old people sharing a double bed for $800 each. Like it's pretty ridiculous. So I think the other issue though that they're going to have is that, like let's say you were to purchase a home for $3 million and it has a suite in it and the demand is so high, it's hard to rent out that suite for $1,000 a month or $800 a month when very well you can get $2,500 to $3,000 for it, right? So I don't really see that housing crisis changing from that standpoint, the rentability. But I think it's one of those pains that any tourist town has. If you look at Tofino, if you look at Whistler, if you look at Cologne, or Big White or Revelstoke, like they all have these, transient population dominated groups that are running a lot of the businesses in town, and there's just not enough housing to actually accommodate a lot of them, especially with the fact that a lot of them are on minimum wage or very close to, right? It makes it difficult to have that. But Whistler is trying, but at the same time, it's gonna be really difficult to combat. So
definitely on both, the public side and the private side doing their best to help that solution. And obviously the challenge on the private side is the ability to charge for market rents, and that could be $1,500, that could be $2,000, or even to your point, could be $2,500 a month with the amount of demand. And touching on the point of new development, are there any new projects, whether that's a condo project, whether that's row townhomes or single family development, that you're most excited about this year?
The only thing about Whistler is that we don't really have much new product. We do have a few things such as Wedgwoods. They're more acreage style properties. They're located about 12 minutes north of the village on the way to Pemberton. Land in there is anywhere from about $1 million to $1.5 million, depending on what it is. But it's awesome because it allows, even though it's outside of Whistler, it allows you to build a main house with an auxiliary building. So you can have, say, like a 4,000 square foot home with a 2,000 square foot coach house in theory. And they have bed and breakfast zoning in Wedgwoods. So a lot of people that have built homes in there in the last couple of years are now starting to Airbnb aspects of their home, and obviously cash flow a lot of money through that. Apart from that, there was some land that was just done, duplex and single family lots in Jackamus, which is at the south side of Whistler, right when you enter. Those are mostly sold out. There's a handful left. And I think the only other thing that's kind of been in the rumor mill for years is centrally located in the village. There's the Whistler Racquet Club near Montebello, which is a very prominently known complex in Vancouver. And there's supposed to be something coming there, but that could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, who knows. If it were to come up for sale, it would be, I think, aggressively priced because there hasn't been a new condo building since, you know, the late 90s. So I think it would sell probably in the first day it was marketed. But it definitely would be awesome to see some more new products in Whistler because it's really difficult wrapping your head around spending $2 million in a condo. If the unit's obviously gorgeous, but coming up the building, a lot of the buildings, if you're not used to Whistler, kind of give a lot of people the fear factor almost because of the side coming off and the paint. So that's like definitely another thing that, again, that touches back to the point I made earlier though, about like really being knowledgeable about the stratas because every building is 30 years old. You want to like buy into the building that has the strata that's been the most proactive because some stratas, even though they're 40 years old, they're running exceptionally well, whereas other buildings are getting hit with special levies almost, you know, yearly or every second year, and that's not what we want as an investor.
Yeah, it would be nice to see some new inventory. You see all these new buildings getting put up, like the Vancouver House here, for instance, in Vancouver, and maybe seeing a new developer coming to Whistler and putting something pretty unique up there would be cool. Is there any, you know, being a local, is there any one area or neighborhood that you love and why?
Totally, yeah. So I think it would depend on what I was utilizing it for. But I think for overall neighborhood, I love Alta Vista and Blueberry. Those are both two centrally located neighborhoods that both offer exceptional privacy, quiet views, but are walkable to everything. You know, even at higher priced, kind of the luxury segments, you know, if I'm dealing with clients in the luxury segment, a lot of the times they'll first come to me and they want Cadenwood or Sunridge, where a lot of the homes are 8 million, 9, 10 plus. But after that, they see there's other great neighborhoods like Blueberry, Nicholas North, which backs onto one of the best golf courses in Canada, that have the exclusivity they're looking for, the privacy they're looking for, yet also being much more centrally located. And if you're utilizing the property a lot, you want something that is more central, I find. Now, from a nightly rental standpoint, again, I think Blueberry is excellent because it allows the nightly rental zoning, which is rare. If you were to look at Whistler on a map, easiest way to tell someone is anything within a few hundred meters of the ski hill is nightly rental zoned. And then everything in the neighborhoods beyond are not. Whereas Blueberry has some pockets that you can short-term rentals. So I think if you're an investor looking for short-term, you're going to get a much better price per square foot. You know, for example, you're going to get a fully renovated 2-bedroom condo that's probably 1,500 square feet for $2 million, whereas a 700 square foot original would be almost that in the dimensions. So I think for a mix of usability and also return on investment, Blueberry is a fantastic space to look. But I think the cool thing about Whistler to me, honestly, is, like I said before earlier, is every single neighborhood up in Whistler is exceptionally safe. There's no, you know, dangerous neighborhood. Everything offers, you know, whether it's close to a certain walking trail or a lake, or a golf course or the mountains, every neighborhood kind of has its own pro and its own con. So I think it's about just getting up there for yourself. And like I said before, seeing as much as you can and really starting to feel what you like best. So.
And obviously, Whistler is known for its world-class skiing. What's your favorite part about Whistler aside from the skiing?
Totally. I would say the Valley Trail. So the Valley Trail is the pedestrian kind of highway, you want to call it. And that takes Whistler from one side to the other. And I think what's so amazing about it is it takes tourists and locals, everything, via e-bike or walking or rollerblading, past every lake, golf course, you know, meadows, everything. And you're not close to the highway. So I think it's an awesome piece, especially, I mean, you can even do it in the winter. You'll see people cross skiing or whatnot, but in summer, all the traffic, it's actually quick to get around on your bike and walking, and the Valley Trail is an excellent spot just to kind of relax and stay connected to everything in Whistler and the amenities without being stuck in traffic and on the highway and in your car. So I would say that. But I mean, Whistler offers, 3 of the best golf courses in BC and Canada. Obviously, the mountain bike park is #1 in North America. Skiing's awesome. Hiking trails galore. So I mean, there's so many things. The amenities, the Scandinavian spa is amazing. The restaurants. So we're lucky. We're lucky for sure.
Yeah, a lot of great attractions. So it's a blast getting up there, and have to let you know when we make it up and grab a dinner for sure. If people were looking to get in touch with you from here or up in Whistler on some of these properties, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, for sure. I live on my cell phone, so I don't know if I'll link my cell phone number here, but honestly, even my Instagram too, it's Jeremy Fairley. And I think Instagram's a cool way in social media in general, because you can kind of start to see how people operate, what their style of marketing is like. And, from stories and things like that, people always being on their phones. It's a really good way, I think, to get a hold of some personality and what they're like before you're meeting them. So, yeah, that's it. Okay.
Awesome.